Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested here, and today we continue part 2 of all the hardware that Valve announced this week. So if you haven't heard, Valve did announce a new VR headset, the Steam Frame. We have a dedicated long video about that. You can find that in the description below. But today we're going to talk about the other 2 hardware announcements that were a big surprise to me, the Steam Controller and the Steam Machine. Didn't we have these like 10 years ago? And Valve would say, yes, 10 years later, we have a new Steam controller and a new Steam machine. But now, of course, all designed with all the expertise and learnings and development that they've had with the success of the Steam Deck. So let's start with a breakdown of what these devices entail, things I learned about them in my visit to Valve, and then we'll wrap up with an interview I did with the Valve team working on these projects. And we'll start with the Steam controller, because this one seemed like a no-brainer. In fact, there have been mods that people have done with the Steam Deck where they've literally taken a Steam Deck, cut apart the sides and joined them together. No, not in Photoshop, but in real life to make some kind of handheld Steam controller. And this is kind of that with a little bit of an angled twist. The original Steam controller, which they discontinued and was very popular among some gaming circles, didn't have thumbsticks. Instead of thumbsticks, had large trackpads. And their big innovation was those trackpads would have these actuators to provide haptic feedback, and the rise of Steam Input as a software mechanism to allow people to configure their gamepads will allow the Steam controller to be robust and versatile for all types of PC games. You know, RTSs, strategy games, as well as shooters and gamepad games. It was, I think, mixed degree of success. A lot of people still love that controller. Steam Deck took some of that and pared that down. It still has these trackpads, but now they're below the thumbsticks, in addition to thumbsticks, and they're lower, and they still have actuators. And so the new Steam controller is basically that. Has thumbsticks, and they're improved thumbsticks with lower drift than what's in the Steam Deck. You have D-pad ABXY, you have your Steam buttons, your menu buttons. You have 2 trackpads, again, almost the same size, these kind of square, squircle trackpads underneath the thumbsticks. Your 2 trigger buttons and 2 newly designed paddles that I believe are now circles as opposed to these squares in the back. The whole thing is a little bit more ergonomic than what's on the Steam Deck because it is angled. I know that's going to be kind of controversial for some of the folks who love the thumb pads and love them having them high up, because the lower thumb pad is, for me, that's the least ergonomic part of the Steam Deck, is kind of squinching up my palm to use the thumb pads, to use the touch pads here. There are 4 motors, so you get haptics on both the pads as well as the triggers. And then one new input for the Steam controller is that it also has gyroscopic input via a toggle that you can have, for example, with a capacitive sensor on either side of the grips. So for folks who use the gyro to do their aiming, high precision aiming, they can have it so the moment you release one hand, you can then activate the gyro. And then the moment you're holding the gamepad, holding both sides, it will then turn off that gyro. Basically, the gamepad knows whether you're holding it with 2 hands, 1 hand, or not holding it at all. All of this feeds into Steam Input, so very customizable, and we're able to bring an Xbox controller to Valve as well to compare it with the new Steam controller, because the photos make it look really big, but it honestly looks very similar in size to a standard gamepad. In fact, it reminds me a lot of like the Nintendo Switch or Switch 2, when you pull off the Joy-Cons and you dock them onto that little adapter. It reminds me a lot of that. Didn't have a ton of extended use time with the Steam controller. So they're saying 35 hours of battery life. That's going to vary, depend on wireless connection, the haptics that you're using on this. But it does have a novel feature. It has a charging puck, this dongle that's connected over USB, and that not only acts as a place that you can magnetically attach the Steam controller to charge it, but also a dedicated 2.4 gigahertz low latency connection. Bluetooth is enabled, so you have the choice, Bluetooth or 2.4 gigahertz, and no word on pricing, but it will be launched and released early next year, early 2026, in the same release window as the Steam Frame. Also, if you have Steam Frame, there are IR lights that allow this controller to be tracked. That was one of the biggest surprises. I love this idea. I was a big fan of tracking the PSVR controller in the PS4 controller in the first PSVR, and there were a lot of fun games like the original Astrobot rescue mission where you could use the controller as a track form of input. And hopefully game developers will tap into that with Steam Controller 2.0 and Steam Frame. Steam Controller will be sold separately, but also as a part of a bundle with the other device they announced, which is their kind of set-top / desktop gaming PC, the Steam Machine. So while there are two SKUs of Steam Machine, there are two storage capacities. It's basically one type of minorly upgradable entry to mid-tier gaming PC, also influenced by I think the success of the Steam Deck. Because I use the Steam Deck a lot as like a docked gaming system in my living room. Like when I'm traveling or I'm in bed, yes, I hold this in my hands, but most of the time it sits docked on the dock they sell, plugged in over USB, plugged in Ethernet, and plugged into my TV because it can play and handle many games just fine. Even at 4K. Steam Machine uses also an AMD APU. It's running SteamOS, and they say it's 6 times more powerful than the Steam Deck. And while they didn't say exactly which APU they use, it is an RDNA 3 GPU with 28 compute units that tops out about 130 watts TDP. The CPU is a 6-core Zen 4 30-watt TDP part. And so the GPU, because it's not a custom part, to me, it feels like it's a AMD like 7600M, if we're lucky, 7600M XT laptop part, which on the NVIDIA side is comparable to like a 4060. All that means to say, if you look at the benchmarks for those GPUs, it can run most your latest AAA games, high settings at about 1440p, 1080p easily, 2560 by 1440p, no problem. Valve is saying gaming at 4K 60 FPS, but the caveat, of course, is with FSR. So natively, you're running probably at 1080 or 1440, depending on your settings. It's entry level. It's like I think entry-level mid-range graphics part. And we were able to look inside the Steam Machine, have the case, the chassis removed, and most of it is heatsink. And so thermals, cooling, that's a big part of it. I don't know if overclocking might be something you might be able to do on these parts, but certainly an advantage of just plugging the Steam Deck into an entertainment console, because this thing definitely overheats when it's behind glass underneath the TV, locked inside the entertainment console. SteamOS also has some improvements that make it more viable as a dedicated kind of desktop or entertainment center computer. One thing that Steam Deck didn't do really well was like background processing of downloading and updating games or software if the display is off. And I know there's a new version of SteamOS that has like a display off mode. That all seems to be things they've put into consideration and optimized for Steam Machine so it can do things like power on your TV and your speaker system. And it can do background downloading and decompression of the games that's downloaded and management that way. And the fact that it's all SteamOS and the storage is all interoperable, that micro SD card in the front allows you to pop out and put it in your Steam Deck or vice versa, or pop it in the Steam Frame, that's something that only Valve could do. That's one of the neatest parts. It has a dedicated radio for the Steam controller, a bunch of radios, for Wi-Fi, for other controllers as well. Their radio placement seems to be a big priority for them. The parts that are upgradable are the storage and the memory, although that requires a little bit of more taking the system apart. And there's some customization in the front panel part as well to personalize it. One of the features I like the most is the RGB LED bar that lights up from the bottom, kind of like our bamboo printers, to let you know when a download is finished. That's a nice little visual indicator. No word on pricing. Availability will be same as Steam Controller and Steam Frame. This is early 2026, but they did hammer in the fact that this is kind of still an entry-level gaming PC, not a high-end gaming PC, and so a lot of performance will have to be tested. But just in terms of, sheer power consumption, 130 watt part on the graphics side puts it in that entry to mid-range graphics computer. And them saying that 6 times the graphics processing power of Steam Deck could give us a good indication of the type of more modern games that this can handle that the Steam Deck can't handle. I like that they're doing validation for all of these games. So it'll be, Steam Machine certified, Steam Frame certified, as well as Steam Deck certified. These are things that they're doing internally to make sure the games work on Proton, via Proton on Steam OS. And because it's a PC, you can jump right into desktop mode. You can install whatever software you want. It's an x86 system. This could be a fun thing to tinker with. Kind of reminds me also of the Framework PC, the Framework desktop that was announced earlier this year in that regard. If I was to guess on pricing, I would hope that because there's no display, no LCD, no OLED, and no battery, that this would be aggressively priced in comparison to a Steam Deck. That would make sense for someone even with Steam Deck to pick this up, because you could stream from this to your Steam Deck and have your, all these devices kind of can work together in a very Valve way. But that's all to be announced. No pre-orders today either. So we'll wrap this up with a sit-down interview I had with the Valve team about Steam Machine and about Steam Controller. But want to thank you for watching this, and let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on the revival of Steam Machine and the Steam Controller. Thanks for watching, and let's head back to Valve. Rizan, Jeremy, thanks so much for having us here to check out both the Steam Machine and the new Steam Controller. We were just talking off camera, it's been like a decade since we saw a version of these things. You guys released Steam Controller as a product, Steam Deck, but Steam Machine, that's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
Yes, we're really excited about the Steam Machines. As you know, we definitely learned a lot, both from 10 years ago. We learned a lot from the Steam Deck. We really feel like we finally have all the software and the hardware bits to make that vision a reality.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what motivated us to finally make it happen.
Yeah, the software bits makes a lot of sense. Steam Deck being a very big success, Proton working really well, people having a growing library of games. Like I put my Steam Deck under my TV in the dock and use like a Bluetooth gamepad. Now there's a way to play those games that you can even drop the micro SD card from the Steam Deck right in here.
Yes.
You talk about waiting for the hardware to be right. Can we hear about what the configuration is? What is this running on?
Sure. So we have a discrete AMD RDNA 3 GPU, 28 CUs, somewhere in the 2.4 to 2.5 gigahertz, 110, 130 watts. CPU is 6-core Zen 4, something like a 30 watt TDP range. And so that's kind of like the raw numbers. And so it all of it kind of comes together in what we believe is a really great 4K 60 machine with FSR, with upscaling. So you should be able to play all your Steam games and get really good performance that way.
Yeah, when you're looking at choosing those components, I know AMD has been a big partner for you guys. Do you look at power consumption versus form factor, volume of the unit, and the cooling that you can get? Like, how do you decide, okay, this is that performance level that we think makes the most sense for someone using this as a dedicated gaming computer or living room gaming computer?
Well, we kind of look at it from two different directions, right? The first one is it needs to have enough performance to play all your Steam games. Like, that was really important to us. We want it to be a pretty simple experience. You don't have to worry about, oh, I play these games, I don't know if it has enough performance to play these games. So that was the first hurdle, is like, we need to make sure that there's enough performance that you don't have to worry about that. But we also kind of wanted to target more of an entry-level device. So, we understand that affordability is really important, right? And so that definitely the price point and it definitely played a huge factor into what performance level we're trying to target. And so, that's kind of, essentially we can use those two directions to triangulate what we think makes the most sense. Another thing that we actually looked at is like just the Steam hardware survey. So basically that just gives us a good benchmark of where people's home devices are at in terms of performance. And the Steam Machine is equal or better than 70% of what people have at home. So that's also another way to kind of think about it, where we kind of arrived at that performance level.
I remember with the Steam Deck OLED, that was kind of a custom version of AMD's APU that they made for you guys. Is that the same case here, where it's a custom chip? That
It is a semi-custom chip, so the silicon is off the shelf, but we've worked really with them a lot on tuning the firmware and the software bits to kind of make it work really well with SteamOS.
Is it a separate tape out even?
It is. No, we didn't tune any of the actual silicon itself.
Okay.
But the firmware bits and the software bits are all customized for us. And I think what we were able to achieve was really great. Like we were able to squeeze a lot of performance out of it. And yeah, I mean, when you get your review in it, hopefully you'll get to see that yourself.
Yeah. And you said, you gave me some indication of the peak power consumption, right, on CPU and the GPU side. These are machines that are meant to kind of always on. They can activate your TV, activate your sound bar. What's the base level power consumption that you're going for?
It's a little early for me to give you an exact number, but it's really low. I can confidently say that it's really low. We're able to get the idle or the background task power consumption numbers to be best in class, in my opinion. Like it's not, obviously you will never notice that it's on. There's no fan, no noise, nothing like that.
But the processes are running for things like updating games or downloads, which is something I know. Even using Steam Deck as a docked system, I have to power it on to do my downloads, and that's very compute intensive. And I choose between playing the game, updating the game.
So there's two things actually that kind of play into that. So the first one is we've recently started to use a different encode scheme for game downloads on Steam. It's rolling out. So what that really translates to is that you need way less CPU to do decompression on games when you download. So there's like way less CPU work needed to do that. So that's kind of one thing. But also, with Steam Deck, battery life is a huge factor. We actually talked a lot about being able to support background download modes. We have some ideas on how to do that, but it's just way harder because of battery life. It's a lot easier for us to do with something that's plugged into the wall. We can get the power consumption to be really low, but with battery life, you have to be even more. It's just like people don't want to suspend their device, come back to it and find it dead, right? That's just a really bad experience.
But there's the same fundamental architectures running the same SteamOS, and so I can imagine as you guys are developing SteamOS to work for Steam machines, some of those kind of benefits might work for Steam Deck.
100%, yes.
Dock Steam Deck mode.
100%,
like
yes.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the battery life issue, Steam Deck can support it. It's just that we're trying to continually optimize the power consumption to make it viable on the battery handheld device.
And then to wrap up on some of the hardware specs, the base level of memory and storage capacity?
So we have 8 gigs of VRAM, 16 gigs of DDR5 system RAM, and there's 2 models. One is 512 gigabyte SSD, and the other one is going to be a 2 terabyte SSD.
Oh, got it. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Now, alongside Steam machines, of course, there's the new Steam controller, Jeremy, and while you guys will be offering it as a bundle as well as separately, this is its own thing. It's the evolution of the Steam controller that you guys no longer make, but was so popular that kind of made Steam Input a thing.
Yeah, it's a very versatile PC gaming controller. We took everything that people loved about the input set that we provided in the original Steam controller, applied that to the Steam Deck. Everything people loved about the Steam Deck, we applied it to the controller form factor. So you have all those advanced inputs with the trackpads. You also have gyro aiming, and we also added an additional feature for input called grip sense, which actually will detect if you're holding the controller or not, or if how close your hand is, and you can disable, enable gyro, or if you want to actually map it to a button or some other input. With the versatility of Steam Input, you can do that as well.
I see the DNA of so many of your past hardware products, from the Valve Index controllers, the Steam controller in here. That grip sense, Valve Index had a grip sense, a version of that with individual finger sensing. Give me a sense of how granular the sensing you can get on each side of the controller.
You do get a continuous thing. It's capacitive. You can, based on that response, we can tell how far or how close it is for an individual. It's
individual
not,
finger?
No, for individual hand. We are not doing finger sensing here. It's mainly just to say, are you releasing your grip? If so, do this thing, in which we think, based on what we know when we talk to people that use controllers, especially people that use gyro control, that's a really valuable way to make that a feasible input for people. And we think a broader base of the population could really get into it if we provide something like that for them.
Yeah. Haptic feedback, also a big thing you guys introduce, especially with the touchpads. You have
Yeah.
versions of that.
People love the haptics on the trackpad. Even if they're not using the trackpad for mouse, they just love the way it's almost like a fiddle factor.
Yeah.
But we know like there's a big benefit to having an immersive haptic experience. So we put some HD haptic rumbles in the handles that will provide a more accurate, higher fidelity experience for gamers. Along with still keeping that traditional haptic input that we have on our touchpads.
Can you say how many motors are inside? Is it like
Yeah,
shared
we have 4 total. There's 2 on the trackpads, which we've had since the Steam controller days, which people, like I said, people really love that. And then we added 2 in the handles that are more for game-related haptics that people come to expect with a traditional gaming controller.
For the triggers, are they activating the ones in which set?
What's that?
When you use the trigger, the haptics, like I noticed when I was using it, there was a little bit of haptics in the trigger.
That is probably the ones in the trackpads.
Okay,
interesting. They're activating there. Yeah.
But all that, customizable.
That's the thing is like there's so much versatility in how you can use this thing that like if you want a haptic bump when you pull the trigger to get that feedback, you can do that. If you don't want that, you can take that off. You can use the trackpads for mouse. You can use it for bringing up a radial menu. There's just tons of options.
How much do you guys consider, that's software customization, but hardware customization? People have their expensive, high-end gamepads where people can swap out the thumbsticks. You guys
well, we've added magnetic thumbsticks here, TMR, which one of the big problems people have is drift. These aren't going to drift over time. So hopefully people don't got to switch those out. But if they can, we think it's important for people to be able to take their controllers apart and do whatever they want with them. You can look in the back. There's 7 screws. You can unscrew them, pop it out. And the battery itself is just something you pull out and you can put back in. So like if you've owned this for 10 years and you need a new battery, you can just swap it out if you need to.
I do want to mention that like obviously with every hardware component, it will eventually fail. Like TMR thumbsticks will last a lot longer, but they're not gonna have infinite life, right? So eventually, they will fail.
Yeah.
I know there's direct integration between the Steam controller and the Steam machine. You have a dedicated radio. It obviously comes with its own puck and it can work as a wired controller. You guys are also announcing Steam Frame. Is there integration between Steam machine and Steam Frame? Have you guys spec'd out what performance is like? Is that a pairing that makes sense?
Yeah, we do. We think the pairing makes sense. I mean, obviously the most obvious way that makes sense is you can use the Steam machine to stream games to your Steam Frame, right? So the performance is there to play a lot of VR titles. The wireless experience is going to be great. But we feel like it's a really good companion for a Steam Frame from a streaming standpoint.
Yeah, the wireless radio, the dongle, that's not built in to Steam machine.
So we don't have the wireless dongle built in, but we have a very capable Wi-Fi radio on the Steam machine. I think for most people, it's probably better to still use the dongle. Part of it is because, if you want to maintain a Wi-Fi connection and stream at the same time, then you need 2 Wi-Fi radios.
Right.
And so that's probably the best experience. But yeah, so that the USB port in the front is partially for that as well.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of upgradability, I saw there's access on the bottom to swap out storage. Can you upgrade RAM? Like what are the things that you can and can't upgrade?
So we have the SSD. We can accommodate up to 2280 form factor SSDs. You can upgrade that. You can also upgrade memory. We're using SODIMM DDR5. And a lot of the connectors are kind of on their own daughter boards, so you can change those if they break or repairability, etc. The CPU and the GPU are on the same motherboard, but the memory SSD and a lot of the I/O is upgradable or changeable.
It's not soldered in memory.
It's not soldered in system memory. The VRAM is soldered,
right.
But that's just the way VRAM works.
Yep.
But the system memory is SODIMM.
Got it. And then the front panel, a customization option. I know you use the RGB light in the front. What's the idea? Is this something that people can buy versions of to mod or download a file to 3D print themselves? Or?
Exactly. So we are going to make the 3D files available for people to print, do whatever they want, customize them however they want. We have some examples for you later today. I'm sure People will make their own as well. We think that's great. But yeah, this is essentially our way of letting people make their Steam machine fit right in their living room, whatever their decor is. We really like this feature. I think a lot of our customers are going to love it too.
Yeah, it's custom firmware now for what you've built with your hardware partners.
Yes.
The updates to SteamOS make Steam Machine beyond this hardware more possible as a platform for people building their own from scratch.
Yes,
systems?
there's actually a lot of things that SteamOS had to learn to make the Steam Machine possible. I mean, one of them is like VRAM management and being able to suspend when you have VRAM, and we have to like move the bits back and forth between system RAM and VRAM. So there's a lot of technical work that actually needed to happen. Like with the Steam Deck is an APU, so it's unified memory, so that was never needed. Steam Machine, there's a few other things that we needed to do. And so, yeah, I think it's things that SteamOS needed to learn to be more of a general, be able to be used on different form factors. And that's kind of something we learned from the Steam Deck is when we collaborate, when both the hardware engineers and the software engineer at Valve are working together to collaborate on the device, both the hardware is better, but also the software is better. I mean, we're seeing that with some of the third-party handheld devices, right? I mean, in our opinion, SteamOS runs better on those devices because we make our own hardware. And just like the Steam Machine, third-party gaming PCs that want to run SteamOS will run better because we are making our own hardware. If anything, I think this is actually more of a bigger canvas in some ways. Like, people and other companies can make more performant devices, bigger devices. Like, there's a lot of more ways you can do when you're not limited by some of the handheld limitations. So yeah, so we're excited to see what other devices and form factors SteamOS can be run on, really.
Well, thank you both so much. Excited for you guys to, there's a lot more work to come to get this to the shipping point. So excited for that to finish and for us to test it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for watching. One of my favorite things we make in our tested store are demerit badges. These are like scout badges, but for screwing stuff up, because screwing up is not just a part of the making process, it is intrinsic to it, and we like to celebrate that. We've got 27 so far in the Supervisors bundle that you can go buy right now by clicking on the link in the description, but we also have a booster pack of some brand new patches. This is the demerit badge for burning off your eyebrow. I am proudly sewing that to all of my clothes. This is the demerit badge for having a messy workbench, which I do not get today. My workbench is super clean. And we have new octagonal patches that are, merit badges. This is the merit badge for sweeping up your shop. Congratulations, I'm so proud of you. And this, oh my God, this is great. This is the merit badge for creating a clean space on your bench. Hey, we got to take our successes where they come and meet them there. Go to the tested-store.com or adamsavage.com to buy any of these, or click on a link in the description.